Libraries have traditionally played a key role in connecting residents in both urban and rural communities. But during the past year, during the pandemic, the demand for connectivity and connectivity services and computer access has skyrocketed. Earlier, I spoke with Dr. Rhea Lawson, Executive Director of the Houston Public Library, to explore the evolving role of libraries in our digital world. Take a listen.
I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Rhea Lawson, Executive Director of the Houston Public Library. She's led the library since 2005 and has been keenly focused on ensuring that public libraries evolve and innovate to remain essential to the quality of life in communities. Welcome, Dr. Lawson.
Thank you, Julia. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Just to start off with, I remember when I was a little girl growing up in Orange County, Florida, and going to the public library. And I mostly checked out books. At that time in the mid to late 90s, computers were just, kind of getting started, and we were just getting access to our own computers. But for the most part, the library system at that point was just about checking out books, but also a community center. I would love to hear from you as to how libraries have evolved in the modern age and what they mean to communities today in 2021.
Thank you. Yes, libraries are still community gathering places. They're hubs of their community. And of course, as technology evolved, the library also evolved technologically and came into the digital age, as we call it. But little girls, like you remember, still come in and find their corner and grab all the books they can, because there's something magical about books, even in the digital age.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know that books and libraries have been very important to a lot of Americans and people even around the world during the coronavirus pandemic. What has the Houston Public Library and other public libraries in the U.S., what have they done to keep their communities, active and keep their communities involved during the coronavirus pandemic?
We closed, and most libraries closed their doors during the pandemic around March of last year, and quickly pivoted to the virtual space, offering virtual services and programs. And the Houston Public Library was among those libraries that began to do curbside service. We called it HPL to go. Similar to how you pick up groceries at the supermarket when you do curbside. And that became very popular, and that phenomenon spread across the country. So people still had access to materials. It was very popular. They had access to e-resources or electronic resources, and also were able, if they did not have a library card, could get a digital library card.
Right. And talk more about, a digital library card and how public libraries have become more technologically advanced in 2021.
Well, the digital library card, you could sign up, of course, online and access virtual materials and resources, take mini courses and those kinds of things with access. Once you have that digital card access. And most libraries are doing that kind of reach to the communities virtually. In terms of how we are helping the community during the pandemic and beyond, people still have needs to fill out job applications and resumes and those kind of life skills kinds of things to keep them moving. And so one of the ways the Houston Public Library has expanded the reach for those who had a phone, for example, but didn't have internet access. We put high-powered antennas on selected libraries. So people would gather in parking lots, or sometimes it would bleed into the homes nearby, and they still were able to conduct business and reach out to family and friends. And we put those mostly in low-income neighborhoods because the data tells us that most people who are not connected to the internet or have access to technology live in low-income neighborhoods and or have little access.
Right, right. And speaking of that digital divide, I think a lot of people, when they hear the word digital divide, they think of urban versus rural communities, and they assume that rural communities tend to have less access to the internet than more urban or suburban areas of the country. However, I think we are very, often miss the fact that there's lots of communities in larger cities that don't have access to internet or connectivity the same way that other communities in a city might in that way. Talk to me more about that divide, and also, as the city, the largest provider of internet connectivity in Houston, how you're working to close that divide.
We're working very hard to close the divide, Julia. It's a big task, however, because as we all know, having internet access is almost like having air these days. And it's true that in the lower income communities, choices have to be made about whether you have cable TV or whether you have access to the internet, because life has its priorities. So libraries, beyond the high-powered antennas so people can have access, there are hotspots that we loan that can connect up to 10 people in a household that they keep like checking out a book. And we even have loaned laptops that also are mini tablets, that small tablets, about very, very small, but nonetheless, it provides access and connectivity. And we've made sure that people can keep them, especially during the pandemic, for all of a year, just about. But most are keeping it for 3 months at a time.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And, it's worth noting that we're having this conversation as Tropical Storm Elsa is bearing down on the west coast of Florida. I know that during Hurricane Harvey a few years back, the Houston Public Library played a huge role in helping those who lost power or internet connection to get connected. As we face more of these, natural disasters, whether it's a hurricane or a tropical storm, talk about the way that your library during Hurricane Harvey or maybe other instances has helped quickly connect people in times of need.
Fortunately, the Central Library never went down in the storms that we've had. And so it became a community gathering place. We opened our doors as soon as it was safe to do so that first responders could leave their children with the staff there at the Central Library, and so that they can go and do what was necessary to bring our city back online. So we were like first responders for first responders, but schools were closed. No electricity was around the city. And so because we were up and running, because we had trained staff, we were able to have those kids come in and have learning but fun experiences during the day. Many didn't want to go home when parents came to pick them up. But we want to be, and we have been, the library in the moment. Whatever the moment is, we try to rise up to it to help the city, almost like the lily pad concept. We've served even in the neighborhoods when floodwaters were in people's homes and the library was dry. We served as lily pads for people to catch their breath or even be safe until first responders could get to them.
Right, right. And you talk about those activities that take place at a library. And I guess I'm sort of circling back to my first question. I would love to hear, the percentage of visitors that are coming to the library to maybe use computers or use internet versus those who are maybe coming in to check out books or even coming to be a part of a community and meet other members of their community.
Well, just like most organizations, you have customers who come in for different reasons. And there is a large part of the community who have young children that bring their children in to experience story time. It's a special time for family or children and their caregivers. And then there are those that are waiting in line for the library to open so that they could be first to our computers. We have about 2,000 computers over 42 locations, which is a drop in the bucket for the need that, as I mentioned, people are standing in line. We give them an hour. And you and I know how quickly an hour goes when you are online. And so they re-sign up or get in the queue again so that they can have more time. So there is a dire need out there, and libraries are moving as fast as they can with the limited resources that we have to provide, as I mentioned, hotspots, computer access, classes to teach people who don't know how to use technology, seniors, as well as people at any life stage that want to learn. We're there to help, because you can't fill out a job application. You can't, almost everything now is online, and the pandemic upped that. It made it even more critical that you have a virtual presence. But I'd like to mention one thing that we did to reach children and their caregivers over the pandemic. We partnered with a local television station, KHOU, to provide a television early learning activity segment on a popular morning show, so that people who didn't have access to the internet but had a television set could still benefit from the early learning activities and the STEM activities that we were able to provide. With over 24 million views, and when it was showed again, that rose to 86 million, and we're very proud of that. It won us a national award for innovation.
That's amazing, and congratulations on that award. It's,
thank you.
Honestly, listening to you and hearing what your library and your community has done for the greater community of the Houston, Texas area is very inspiring. Dr. Lawson, thank you so much for joining us. And we wish you and the Houston Public Library the best as we hopefully get out of this pandemic.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.